Hey everybody, how's it going? It's been a while, but welcome to part 3 of Let's Make a Mech, Nova and Hellbringer edition. And I stopped at this part of making the model on purpose. The reason I said we're going to stop here is there's some things to talk about. Firstly, these are pewter models. That was obvious. Battletech is pretty much a pewter-driven game. Aside from the introductory box set, which has the one-piece plastic models and the two kind of higher-end multi-piece plastic models, I cannot recall any other non-pewter model for Battletech, aside from a couple of dropships I think are pewter resin hybrids. Other than that, they're pretty much just pewter. And I don't know if they're ever going to go to plastic. So, the pewter is really no different than any other pewter, aside from the fact that their models are not slotted bases, meaning there is no tab connected to the model to help connect it to the base. I find those are a bit stronger connections when you have that tab. These do not have it. You glue them directly down to the base with their feet. Also, the Warhawk that I bought, and it seems like every other mech out there, does not come with base. You need to get bases for it. And they sell them separately in a pack. I do not know if those bases are still pewter or if they're plastic. I can't tell by the picture and there's no description. But, regardless of that fact, I like to connect my pewter models directly to the base, regardless of if it's a plastic base, a pewter base, if it's tabbed or not. The reason I like to do that is you get a much stronger bond to the base when you glue it directly down to the base without anything in the way. When you glue it down on top of flock, you're just pretty much gluing it onto the flock, and that's not the strongest bond. It works for plastic models because they're nice and light, but for pewter it won't really work well at all. So, with the slots, it tends to work a bit, or some other type of tab, it'll work okay. But with these guys, you want to glue them directly to their base. Now, luckily enough for me, these older models, their feet are connected directly to their base anyway, so no need to worry. Now, what I did was I used super glue here because PVA glue does not form a good bond on a pewter base. So I used a heavy amount of super glue, got the flock on there. I let the flock fully dry for a few hours to make sure it's nice and completely set in there before I brushed the excess off lightly with a finger, or I blew on it lightly. Then I immediately went and I did the base coat for the base first, which was Beef Shield Brown. The reason I did that was that acts as a sealant over the flock. It helps keep the flock on the base. The glue does that primarily, but then from the top I could pick pieces off if I wanted to. You still could with the paint on top of it, but it's a bit of a stronger bond now. It's got something cooling it down from the bottom, and now it's got the paint going over it and seeping through it to the bottom, sealing it in there as best it can. And I also do that first because if I get anything on the mech, I don't care. I'm just going to go over that with black anyway. Now, I Chaos Blacked the mechs. Any black will do. I made sure to get it in as best I could quickly without covering up any detail. And if I got it on the flock, no big deal. I can come back and touch that up later once the mech is done. So, pretty much we're not going to do anything with the flock on the base anymore until the very end. Now, the model is going to get a foundation color on there. As you can see, it's not 100%. There is some pewter parts showing out. That's okay. You have two options there. A, you can go back with your black, maybe a smaller brush, and get into the nooks and crannies. Or B, if you're like me and the second color going on there is not going to be the final color, you can just go on with that secondary color. Now, for me, it's going to be a Deadest Battle Gray foundation paint. That gives good coverage. In fact, some people out there will just use foundation paints when it works for the appropriate color scheme in place of doing a base coat of white or black. And that can work just fine. However, being that we're working with pewter, and being that we're working with gray in this particular instance, I like to put a color down before the Adeptus Battle Gray. Now, just a couple reasons for that. Firstly, this is pewter, and paint tends to flake off pewter a little bit easier, so having more paint down there, you'll have an easier time seeing A, where paint's flecking off, and B, getting the paint on there and sticking to the pewter before you seal it. Secondly, certain colors, like metallics like silver or Vulcan, and grays, when I put them over pewter, and with gray over plastic also, I like to have a color underneath it to see where I've missed. It can be a little hard. I mean, you still can, but it may take a little bit more focus to look at it, especially if you put Vulcan right over pewter, if you're going to do that for some reason. It would be harder to tell where you missed the paint than if you put it over black or white. So that's why I did that. Now, with that being said, that's this step. So what's the next step? The next step's going to be an easy one. I'm going to do the Adeptus Battle Gray over the entire thing. And then what I'm going to do after that is put the Fortress Gray over it. So I'm not going to show you the Adeptus Battle Gray. I'm going to show you it with the Adeptus Battle Gray and then the Fortress Gray over it to get a nice solid Fortress Gray color. So you're going to see it only when it's got the Fortress Gray on it. But I wanted to show you this and be a little long-winded about it. A, to see if people complain on comments, and B, because I felt it important to talk about the fact that the pewter models, talk about using a pewter base in case you never used one before, and talk about base coating the model with a color, even if you're going to use foundation paint, which is what I'm going to use. So that's pretty much it. And until next time, take it easy.